Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab my charger real quick, just in case.
You go grab your charger. You go grab your charger. I'll do a little intro. Hey everybody, we are back. It is me, Ravenflower, and today I am talking to one of my good younger friends, my witchy young male friends, named Nathan. And Nathan has been around for, I don't know, a hot minute. You've been around for a hot minute, a few years. And it's always a pleasure to talk to Nathan. I feel like he's super wise beyond his years. And in fact, he was just telling me something, and I'm just like sitting here like, wow, like you always impress me. You always impress me. And I think that you're very well spoken. You've gone through a lot. You've really held your own in the no fucks given. And I really like that about you. I really like that about you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, well, welcome to Truth Talk. And so Nathan has a story that he wants to share. I want to welcome everybody. I don't see a whole lot of people in the chat right now, but I see that we have some people watching. Are you open to questions towards the end, do you think?
Absolutely. I love questions. So go ahead and type them in the chat and I will get those answered for you.
Awesome, Blossom. Okay. Well, without further ado, what you been doing? How'd you get here?
Hello. My name is Nathan King, for those of you who don't know me. I am about to be 21 years old this next February, so that's coming up. I have been practicing witchcraft since I was about 11, 12 years old, seriously practicing and studying the craft. When I was 18, I moved from the Detroit, Michigan area all the way to Salem, Massachusetts. So I am a Salem resident here in lovely Salem, Massachusetts, where I am a theater maker, a witchy content maker. I worked as a psychic here in town for the past 2 years. Taking a break from that right now, as COVID has definitely changed a lot of atmospheric things for all of us. So I've been taking on a new direction. I've also been a tour guide about Salem and her history for those past 2 years as well. I was also a member of the Witch Walk, which is one of Salem's only tours talking about real practicing witches. And since I've been in town, I've also been initiated into the Minoan Brotherhood, which is a form of traditional initiatory witchcraft or traditional Wicca. And that is a tradition exclusive to gay men or bisexual men. And I am a first degree initiate of that tradition. So it's a huge honor to be on here to talk about that a little bit. And that's what I do with my life, in addition to being a barista at Starbucks and a full-time theater student, which in of itself is the study of magic making and channeling and grounding and all those things, you know, the magic of ritual.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, all those things. Yes. yes.
And I also do a little bit of drag on the side too. So.
But I didn't hear that. What was that?
I do a little bit of drag on the side too. So.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I saw some pictures on Facebook, and it was something Grace. I couldn't remember what your drag name was.
Grace Garland. A classical queen.
I loved the pink. I loved the pink all over the place. That was awesome. And the lips. That was awesome. I love it. Okay, I'm just typing a little thing. Question, put it in bold. I'm going to tell them to put it in bold so that we can see those questions quite quickly. Do you have your chat up or no?
I do have my chat up, yes.
Okay, so you'll be able to see stuff as well. Okay. Hi, Moon Whisperer. How you
doing?
Hello, Kim. Okay, so when I first come to know you, I think it was when the live chats were like out of freaking control, and everybody was like literally there was somebody like Noah would finish his live stream and then I would go on after him, and then Tequila and Wednesday would have another one for late night, and it's just like that was the thing, like almost 6 days a week, and people were like bouncing all over the place. I think it was 2016-ish time frame, and I had put up a group just for people to know when the heck people were on, because some were just like, damn it, I missed it. Damn it, I missed it. So you had infiltrated said group, and you were doing lives on there, and it was so like, I am like, look at this kid. Look at this kid. He's so, I keep saying dynamic, but it's true. It's just so like, you're like a force to be reckoned with in some ways, but in like the most wonderful ways. The most
Oh,
wonderful ways. I mean, really true. And I mean, I mean, we all have our dark side, and nobody really wants to be on the bad end of me when I'm angry, because that's what I'm. Bear says I'm only Puerto Rican when I'm mad. So, so, I'm sure that we all have our dark situations, but I think that you're lovely. I think that you're just absolute. If I could just adopt you and put you under that, absolutely. I'm seriously. I love you. Freaking love you.
oh my gosh. Well, thank you. And that's like the biggest compliment is I mean, dynamic is such a good word, but that's really what I have striving, just striving for in my practice is to be able to be dynamic. I think that's so important for witches, to be able to, harness your power and to use that in any way, anytime, anywhere, because it's ours, and it's ours to have, and it's ours to use all the time, because it's all around us and it's all the time, and I'm a firm believer that our world and the other world are not separate. They're directly intersecting with each other, right on top of each other all the time. And we get to be a part of that. And so there's a lot of celebration and joy to be had in that. And so I really think once we start to look at ourselves within that big realm of things, and we're able to kind of find that talent of whatever it is we're passionate about, that's what I think attracts good spirits to us, to enable us to do good things. And that's a lifelong search. I'm still seeking for whatever that is, but it's that process and that celebration that make it worth it, and that make it go on the day to day. So be dynamic in all the things that you can be. You're always a student, and the best students become the best teachers, and the best teachers are also the best students. Like, there's this great reciprocity with that.
Yes, we have things to teach as we are learning things. We have things to teach others as we are taking on new practices, new things. You and I were talking about before we went live about the difference in where we live. Do you feel that your magic is different from being in, the Midwest versus now being on the East Coast? You were talking about the quote unquote dynamic of Salem and how different it is for you.
Yeah, it's completely different. If any of you guys are out of the Midwest, you might know what I'm talking about. But in the Midwest, the spirits that I encountered there, probably because I was born there too, being native to there, they were a lot more abundant. There was a lot more protective spirits, almost, and spirits of kin, spirits, that are easy to kind of form some sort of relationship with. But when I moved to the East Coast, and this was my first big move in my adult life, it took a good 6 months for me to be able to establish any sort of relationship with my genie loci, or my local land spirits. It's almost as if, because of all the things that have happened here in Salem, right? We have the Salem witch trials. We've got, over 36 treaties, millions of treaties being broken because of the native people that have lived here. I'm in Wampanoag Nation, or the people of Namakeg, which meant people of good fishing. So we have a lot of native spirits here. Very wounded people, a lot of history happened here. So it takes those spirits a long time for them to get to know you. They have to observe you and see what your deal is, because a lot of people have come through this land before and haven't treated it right, and being a witch, we all have this understanding that, this isn't ours, this is borrowed, and we are stewards and priests and priestesses of this land. And I'm sorry, but Puritans and Quakers don't really have that for, their time period at all. So there's a lot of bloodshed here. So it took a while for me to kind of adjust to those energies. Some of those energies are very violent. Some of those energies are very seditious, and that's, you know, not something I want to plug into. But being somebody who works with energy and is very sensitive, if that's around you, you have to learn how to work with that. You know, so a lot more protection work happens in this house than let's say my house in the Midwest, and a lot. But also there is a lot more spirits here who have a lot more things to say than I ever encountered in the Midwest, because so many things happened, right? So you're going to get a lot more stories in an area. And we're also very tiny. Like Salem is a very, it's more of a town than a city. You know, technically we're a city, but we're a very small town. You can pretty much walk, you know, everywhere you need to go to in town if you're visiting. And so it's crowded with energy. And in addition to that, in the world of the living, we have a million magical people walking around practicing witchcraft, practicing occultism. You know, we don't have just witches here. We've got people doing Santeria, ceremonial magic, goetic magic. We have the Temple of the Satanic Temple here, which is a political organization. We have, you know, all these different practices, all these different beliefs, and everybody, you know, is kind of doing it all at once. So that's going to create an even thicker atmosphere, magically speaking. And that took a lot of time to learn how to navigate as well.
Yeah, that reminds me of oh gosh. Okay, so me, I refer to myself as constantly haunted, because I mean I don't have to use a Ouija board or a pendulum or anything like that. I'm just like, it's there. So I have to sometimes just, you know, there are times that I just hold up in my house because it's a safe place and I'm used to that energy, and I don't have my own energy threshold has like reached its limit. So there's times that I'm choosing not to go to the grocery store. But every time I go to Louisiana, oh, every single time I go to New Orleans, it's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Here we go again. And it's like, if it's very similar to like Whoopi Goldberg dealing with Patrick Swayze in Ghost, where he's singing Henry VIII Diane, and so it's like they won't leave me alone. So I've had to create this like travel kit with me, you know, so what works for me at home will not work for me while I'm traveling, and I have to like layer that shit. It's bad. So I'm sure that it's going to be very similar when I go to Salem as it is in New Orleans, because there's so much going on. So much going on.
I will say, it's funny you brought up New Orleans, because I got the chance to go to New Orleans. I went to Hex Fest, which is run by the same people who own,
right?
They own Hex and Omen here in Salem. They have those two locations are also in New Orleans, but Hex Fest is this huge convention for witches. Amazing, amazing festival. Highly recommend it. I had a great time while I was there, and I met great people, and I got some really great educational things. But I was not prepared. I was not prepared for New Orleans. New Orleans is scary. It scared me. Like, the one thing that I kind of don't like as a psychic is I don't like being startled, and that does happen. And the older I get, the more used to it I get. But I hate being startled, and the amount of times I had so and so, you know, this marquee French gentleman like popping up on the porch, or, you know, and all I want to do is just, you know, smoke my clove cigarette and swim in the pool. That, you know, like there's no getting around it. And I mean, it's the water. I think a lot of these locations, it's not just the ley lines, but we're around so much water here. You know, I look outside my window, I can see the ocean. You get to New Orleans, it's the humidity, you know, and spirits are attracted to water, you know, so they
are. You know, and also New Orleans is built on sediment. So basically all of the, you know, that's everything that's come down from the Mississippi is built, you know, that's what the city's really built on. Water everywhere. And that for this witch, it's like, as soon as it's raining, here we go, you know.
Honestly, no, and here Salem has the same effect. The scariest encounters I've had, probably with the spiritual world, the ghosts, I'll just say the spirits of Salem, is when it gets foggy. Here, when it gets foggy, when we get the fog and the mist that rolls off the ocean and comes up on the coastline, I have seen battles of, of natives versus Puritans. I have seen, settlers. I have seen grand Victorian people. Like, we got it all here. And it's always when those mists roll up and come in. And
it's humidity. It's still connected to water. There's something about the combination of air and water is just, it's like spirit central.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love the concept this is a little obscure, but bear with me. I love the concept in the Chronicles of Narnia, and it's in The Magician's Nephew, where they go to the wood between the worlds. And each pool of water is a portal when you jump through it to get to another world. And that's so in line with the occult teaching behind what water is that emotional carrier, but also it is that portal to that other world. It is how spirits travel. Water, the West, it rules over the realm of the dead. So the fact that, it's this portal, it's this conduit between this world and the next makes a lot of sense. Everybody knows that feeling of being almost haunted when you see that mist kind of roll over on the lake, or when you're doing a ritual. And if you're outside doing a ritual and you get that mist that comes right up to your circle, it's exhilarating.
It is. And I'm glad that you said that it was exhilarating, because there's a lot of fear, I feel, for some of the people that are, and I don't want to say witchlings or new witches. It's not that, because I do feel that we are all born with what we have. And I think everybody has an element very similar to what you're saying. And there's those that choose to use it and those that choose to like walk away from it and turn that off. But I feel that there's a lot of people out there that struggle with the fact that, like, oh, everything bump in the night is got to be wrong or bad or whatever. It's like, I got to get rid of it. I got to get rid of it. It's just like, well, could it be that not everything that goes bump in the night, it could be the answer. It could be the answer to the question that you've been asking. It could be the help that you were looking for. It could be, I'm like, have you even considered working with that? And being an eclectic witch, I'm a little bit more apt to try new things on instead of a very regimented thing. So it's like, I will take all cultures and see what I jive with and what that, what that energy is, what that goddess is, and how I can relate it to my practice. Do you feel that there's a lot of that with those that are just starting their path? So I'll say starting their path, and then like they're kind of ruled by fear. And, especially for me, coming from a Christian religion, I thought, oh my God, I'm really going to hell. I'm making the choice. I'm going to hell. It's going to happen. And I was like scared for my first year.
Yeah. There's two things I'll say to that. The first new budding trend that I've been seeing a lot of, specifically from the TikTok witches, which I love TikTok. I'm on TikTok, by the way. Go find me. I'm at Nathan King 410, something like that. I make witchy TikTok. But what I notice a lot of is there are new witches coming into this, and they are recycling a lot of the verbiage that's being talked about on TikTok without actually asking themselves, is this something I believe? Is this something I want to practice? Is this truth, right? Is this based in something that I'm subscribing to? There's also this nuance when you're first starting out to want to know everything. And so absorbing and believing and taking all the information that you possibly can, even though some of that information might be conflicting. There was a teacher that I had, and he passed on, basically saying to me, don't let he said, be open-minded, but don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out. There's a certain amount of using your own personal discernment and discretion. And I think when we're talking about witchcraft specifically, because that's my experience, but I think magical traditions at all, there's an element of maturity and having basic critical thinking skills as an adult that you may not have when you're first starting out, as I did in my preteens or as a teenager. There's, researching skills, checking sources, those things came with time.
Yeah.
Things came as I got older. So with all of that being said, I think in experience, sometimes people are maybe repeating experiences because that's what they think is going on when that may not be what's going on at all. They just want to be part of the conversation. Rather than seeing the experience for what it was and being able to,
or actually experiencing it themselves or feeling comfortable to experience in themselves. They just sort of like piggyback onto, because they feel like maybe it's just the popular thing to say.
exactly.
That somebody's going to judge them or something if they don't feel that way.
And
I don't know.
Or almost as if their story, like spiritual experiences don't have to make sense. That's they don't have to be linear. They don't have to make sense. If a God comes up and talks to you and says, "Hey, dude," okay, that God said, "Hey, dude," like that's not out of the ordinary. Dare to have the originality in your practice to speak your truth, whatever that may be, no matter how, and dare to let that out, because that is what makes you valid. And I really think, and I'm somebody who I practice traditional, a tradition of traditional Wicca, that came, the Minoan Brotherhood came out of, a Gardnerian style of tradition. And, I think a witch is a witch is a witch. And that's just my, and not all people are going to agree with me on that, and that's fine. But I believe, that witches, where was I going with this? It was really deep. It was something along the lines of, you have to be able to practice on your own and have a connection with your own spirits, with your own deities, whatever those may be. And you have to be able to do that on your own, because only you can co-create your own reality, right? That's a singular thing. And we were talking about this a little earlier, but practicing in a coven, practicing with a group is not for everyone.
Nope.
It's not. And that takes experience. Some people go into it and they say, "Yep, this is not for me," and they step away. Some people, only choose to be solitary because that's what works for them. But at the end of the day, a witch is alone, and then the group is kind of that added on thing. Having a solitary practice is our safety net that keeps us grounded and that keeps us active in the spiritual dialogue we're having with our spirits, with our gods, with our guardians, whatever you work with. So I'm going to say that right off the bat. It's not for everybody. But what I will say about, for me, I think it's very important to have a foundation, whatever that may be. And luckily, being in a craft structure, in a pre-existing tradition that has worked for multiple people before me and will probably work for multiple people after me, has given me that foundation that I felt comfortable with, that has really allowed me to be, again, dynamic, and explore all those things that I want to. But at the end of the day, I can come back to that root practice that I was initiated into. And I think that will help a lot of new people avoid some pitfalls as they're starting off in their practice. There are so many wonderful training opportunities that you get within craft, whether those be traditions. There's, the Cabot tradition here in Salem. There's the Temple of Witchcraft tradition that's run by Christopher Penzak. Amazing value is held in their education and how they teach and how they pass on, very practical, but very important techniques, right? And I think that's important to have, whether you're in, this again goes back to, this is witchcraft. It's a craft. You have to work at it to be better at it. And what I think makes someone better at anything is having a technique, right? So if I'm studying acting, which I am in theater school, we're learning technique, whether that be studying Stanislavski or studying Meisner, whatever it may be. We have a technique that allows us and helps us grow to create change within ourselves, to put on a character. If we put it that in a magical context, a tradition gives you that technique because, everybody's working together to find what works for that group. Right. Or if it's a tradition like, like something like Gardnerian, Alexandrian, the British traditional witchcraft groups, those things have already been established and handed down, from group to group. So those things are already kind of known to work, and it's already had time to grow and has more growing to do. You know, these traditions, our practices evolve as we do. So it's kind of an ongoing cycle.
A lot of people chatting away. Apparently there's a candle.
Yeah.
There's a
I have,
candle behind you that's, going crazy. I had gotten a sense that you have two spirits actively in your space right now that are kind of hovering around you. And I think one of them is your spirit guide, but that's pretty stable. Although I get a very, very kind and almost like an ant vibe from your spirit guide. I don't know what that is, but
yes.
solid.
That is going to be one of my ancestor spirits. I actually was calling in before I did this. I call her Mother Shipton. She's probably not the real Mother Shipton, but I call her Mother Shipton. And she's like my Auntie Mame in the spirit world. Like, that's the best. She's just this big personality. She's always dressed in some sort of medieval garb. And she's just this wise woman, this cunning woman, this peller. The terms that she would use, from the old country, so she's probably English,
Gotcha.
English descent, but she would have been a peller or a cunning woman. But yeah, she's who the red candle is for on the altar. So
isn't that interesting? Because people were asking about that red candle. Hey, that's going off, and I'm like, yeah, it's because he's got it, clearly. Yeah.
Clearly. Probably, being a psychic and working as a psychic, probably my main skill that I use is mediumship. That's something I just innately have. So it's funny, a lot of people, when I'm doing galleries or whatever, they'll pick up on the spirit coming to me and whispering in my ear, and they'll see, clairvoyance will see it. I have some shoots of clairvoyance, but I get it more from feeling and thought and just knowing, it just pops in my consciousness. And
it's exactly how it works for me too. And it's almost like they're thoughts that are not yours, and you're just like, oh, okay, so you're having a conversation with somebody in your head most often, but
and it's in your own voice.
It's sometimes, yes, it's in your own voice. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't say that, and then you're like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. It's a thing for me. But sometimes I'm so scatterbrained and I'm trying to avoid it, and it catches me off guard. You had said something that you don't like being startled. You don't like being startled. I do not. I like watching scary movies for like the content, and I like want to see what happens. But please, my God, do not jump out at me, because I have a fight response. So I punch and I kick, whatever. And it was because of my abusive past that is a thing. So I do not care for being startled at all. And there's certain things like I can't watch. I have tried to watch The Grudge, I don't know, 6 times, but I can't, because it just keeps popping out at me. I'm like, damn. But in the way of spirits, you had said something about New Orleans, which was very interesting, and something I saw a lot of is I usually don't see them, but I can tell where they are and what space they're occupying by me seeing the energy. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It's that piece of whatever we're looking at. It's almost like a fuzz or like electric. It's like, for me, I see it as like static electricity almost.
Okay.
Like it's like looking, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like looking at the other side of a mirror that's not there. So it's like a piece of the landscape that just doesn't quite fit.
It's like Predator when he goes somewhat sometimes. And then in New Orleans, for me, every time I've gone, like, there are shadow people everywhere. Like I was sitting there talking with our friend Eric. We had just came out of one pub. We had saw Coven House that day. We had met them back up for dinner or whatever. And I'm sitting there on the street, and he wanted to take us to this little pub. It was really crowded. And I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling it. And then we just stand outside to try to figure out, and we're on those little cobble streets, damn it. And I see something out the corner of my eye up on the rooftops, and literally there are shadow people crawling on the roofs up, and then they kind of crawl and then like stare at you. Like, you get this, it's just creepy as like it really is. And if you don't have your protection going on, You could see real quick how somebody who has like a substance abuse problem, depression, any of those types of things, somebody who's struggling with, domestic violence, any of those things where your thought process could take you down a negative path, somebody could get you just
Yeah.
like that. I mean, real quick.
And you really, and it adds to the mystique of New Orleans, because it's a different world. The world there, it's completely different culturally from anywhere else I've ever been. The people there are people unto themselves, and they are some strong motherfuckers. They are resilient people. And I guess the spirit, I don't know, living in a spiritual energy kind of makes you that you have to be kind of calloused to that, or strong to that, or there's that. But the thing with shadow people, in my experience, probably the first things I saw when I was opening up psychically were shadow people. And I think a lot of times we get bogged down in definitions or whatever, but in my experience, shadow people have always been those beings. I don't want to call them souls, because they're not quite souls. They might have been at one point, but they're so kind of beyond this realm. They kind of fall into the sublunar, low frequency category that's almost animalistic.
Yeah.
There's a weird animalistic, where, they might manifest as a human form if you're clairvoyant, but they'll be like foaming at the mouth and like growling like an animal, like really disturbing imagery. That's more borderline, shadow people in my experience. But yeah, New Orleans, any city that has that much abuse, but also like that much historical abuse, specifically with slavery, is what I'm talking about here. That's gonna come back, and it is, that's what's gonna bite people, and it does, But those spirits are coming out ever more so nowadays, because that conversation is being had again. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness it is.
And these spirits will say.
Absolutely. I have had, and I do have a difference in where I don't even see them. I just hear them, or I get that, kind of mirror from the other side situation where I can tell what space they're occupying, and I know where to go, where not to go. And I'm like, okay, that's where they're at. Or they will straight up manifest. When I was younger, they would straight up manifest as another person. And I couldn't, when I was a kid, I couldn't tell if I was talking to somebody who was dead or not. I didn't know. I really didn't know. And it was so much so that they thought I was crazy when I was a kid. And, my imaginary friends got so much so that it really unnerved the people that were taking care of me. So I just stopped talking about it. And then when I stopped talking about it, things actually got worse for me. Things actually got worse for me, and maybe because they weren't getting the attention that they needed. I didn't have any guides to kind of say, hey, this is what that is, and this is how to protect yourself from that. I had nothing. So I just ended up falling into a Christian path to try to hide from it, which I found that there's a whole lot more evil in the church than there actually is out and about. I think there's a lot of stuff that's hidden there.
Yeah. Speaking of
the abuse,
I'm just reading the comment, and it's like there's so much activity in this room. It's uncanny. I did not see it, but I'm not at all surprised if it was there. I'll be here. I'll be in my room sometimes doing homework, and a book will like fly off the shelf, or I will have a statue just go, off the shelf, or something. This is the second half of my bedroom, which is specifically a temple space, so this is where I circle, this is where the altars are. And on this side of the room, that's where the bedroom is, that's where the sleeping time is. So I keep it separate by a curtain. But the temple room specifically, that's where I just get stunned with what comes through sometimes. It's crazy. I work with a lot of mirrors. So a lot of times when things will show up, it'll be in the mirrors. Yeah, but things will fly off the shelf, faces will pop up here. I do daily ritual. Having a daily practice for me is really important,
Mhm.
just to keep me in check and to keep me honest with myself. And also it's that time for that day, just time for me and myself and what I want to do. Um, so every day there's something happening here, and that just feeds it and feeds it. And the more magic you do, the stronger it gets, and the more of a place of power, your space will become, because it's repeated, it's stacked.
I think Bear was above me doing something.
Yeah,
It was
uh,
my kitchen window. That's my kitchen window over there. So Bear has made this patio porch situation that we have on our back porch got closed in, and then he got these like really pretty recycled windows and put it all together so the cats can have a lounge to come out. And so we call it because he's the pirate, it's the Mermaid Pub and Lounge.
I love it.
I love it. So this is the outside of my house. This is what the outside of my house looks like, but it's this portion has all been closed in, and so like there's a nice rain going on, and like if there's snowfall, we can sit here and have the back door open, and the heat from the fireplace comes over here and makes this like a really cool little spot. So
That's
I'm finding that my daily ritual is coffee in the morning, watching the sun come up. I light all my altars and come and just sort of like sit and meditate for a little bit. And I love, love, love the fact that you said that your daily practice is something that keeps it keeps how did you put it?
it keeps me
You
honest.
it does. It keeps you honest. It keeps you honest. It does. We can very easily get bogged down with our daily lives and what's going on or how crappy somebody was to us or whatever. But being your true authentic self in your practice means that you have to take time for that practice. You've got to you got to like throw elbows and protect that time and that space, because without it, you don't really have a practice. You're just practicing at it. You're
Right.
not in it.
And it's a process, I mean, there's days where you wake up and you're tired and you don't want to do it. But that's what makes it, it's what makes it a craft, right? Because you're working at it. What we do is a practice. We do witchcraft. We don't sit on it. So you have to be doing it to do it. And if you're going to claim whatever title, hopefully you have earned it, because so many people before you had to work for that title or had to earn that title from their society or what have you. These are sacred, I mean, the word witch, obviously it means wise person. It means, a seeker of knowledge, magus, all these things, earn that title and do yourself the favor to give it to yourself, and that really is about treating yourself as you should, as a vessel of the divine and as a conduit between this world and the next, because that's what you are. So there, I mean, in any knowledge and any understanding, there's going to be responsibility to that knowledge that you now have. And so I think for me, a lot of my practice is rooted in this idea of sovereignty, of staying sovereign to myself and being in touch with my true will. Not just my will, what I want, but even beyond that, of the idea that I'm co-creating my fate with Mother Fate, and whatever life may throw at me, it's my job as a magical person to take control of that. So you can't walk around life with blinders on, and you cannot be closed off to what is all around you, and it takes work to be aware. It takes work to be open, and it takes work to do the work. But if you do the work itself will teach you how to do the work, even if you don't know what you're doing. Just by the intent just by the intention of saying, I'm going to do this, whatever it is you do, it doesn't matter what you do, but it's how you do it. And that's the secret, I think, behind a lot of our magical traditions, is it doesn't matter what you do. A million people have done a variation on the same thing, but it's how you do it.
It's how you It's how you do it. And you had even said, even if you wake up in the morning and you don't feel good about, what you're doing, there's got to be a lesson learned somewhere in there. Think of, why do you not feel good that morning? Maybe there was a specific thing that something is trying to show you, to make
Right.
you aware of, or something that you need to fight through. And if you don't do your practice that day, or you turn a blind eye to it, is that something that could actually get worse? I've seen a couple of people say that they're in burnout right now, and the emotional stress of all of the lockdowns, the lack of social engagement. Heck, I just want to sit in a restaurant. That would be great.
Yeah.
It's cold here. I mean, come on, you're on one coast, I'm on the other coast. It's winter, and it's like outside dining. Bear and I went to outside dining yesterday because we were so desperate to do something. We're sitting in a tent with a heater that is not even close, and whatever, there's cars going by, and I'm like, and this is not fun. Like, I'm
And
like,
scene.
I'm for, like,
And done. Scene. Thank you.
yeah. It's like, but everybody's got burnout. Everybody is dealing with, the politics of the world right now, especially in the US, has been really crappy for our community. It's been real crappy. The common basic decency is not a thing anymore. It's a very divided situation. You're finding more and more like-minded individuals and latching onto them for dear freaking life, because you're so stinking scared of saying the wrong thing to the wrong person. Yes. And I'm still in customer service, and I don't know what I'm going to get. I do not know. From time to time, I do not know. But
and if it's anything like it is for you on your coast, it's exactly the same on my coast. I'm looking at the comments here. This is a perfect segue, I think, because I really do want to talk about kind of what my experience has been this past year, because I struggle with depression, I struggle with anxiety, and I struggle with other things. Like, I have this whole cocktail of things that happen, and this year has really pushed me to my utmost limit. And it has forced me to address those things. And that shadow work that I have done, I'm not quite through it yet. I'm definitely on the other side of it, but it has completely transformed how I look at the world. I wouldn't say it's made me more cynical, but it's definitely made me more truthful in acknowledging some of the harsher things in life, and finding ways to integrate that into my spiritual practice, because there's truth in that. And I think that's what we really strive, what I strive for in my craft anyway, is utmost spiritual truth, whatever that may be. And I think when truth is revealed, it is known. We're all sensitive enough to the fact that we have that. So for me, the first step obviously was acknowledging, like, I am burnt out. I do not want to do this. I went probably 2 months without doing any magic. I didn't read. I didn't do any psychic readings. I didn't want to. I felt as if my gods had failed me in some way.
Well, that's a horrible place to be. I understand.
I felt as if I was talking and nobody was listening.
Yeah.
And that, there's just this anger that came out of nowhere, where it was like, I do all this, I give you offerings and I do these rituals, but where are you when I need you? And I wasn't doing my daily practice because I was giving into that space. It wasn't until I actually sat down and did a ritual for myself that I was able to separate that voice, whatever that was upon me. I was able to separate it from myself and have a conversation with it.
Wow.
And it took me probably 20 minutes before I realized what was happening, where I was, realizing, how sensitive I was to the world, and how I was taking on all these things. And because I wasn't doing my end of what I need to do to stay spiritually well, and I didn't know what those things were until I got pushed to these limits, that I was like, wow, this is something I can fix. This is something that I can be patient with and take time with. And it's a day-to-day thing. I take it one day at a time. It's not something that resolves itself overnight. It never will. But what it is it's a roadmap. It tells you what is, it tells you what's missing.
Yeah.
Or it tells you what you crave. And
Mhm.
then you're able to make an adjustment. And if you don't know what that adjustment is, you don't have to. You can ask the universe for that, or you can ask other people for it. All it is, I mean, it's just acknowledgement. And again, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So, going back to that, allow burnout, allow depression, allow angst, whatever it may be, allow it to be your roadmap. To tell you what you're lacking, or what you need, or
use it to your benefit,
and use it, because we have anxiety for survival. It's there because it tells us what we need to survive. So we do need it. But within the world we live in, it's out of control right now, and that's understandable. So we have to reteach ourselves as a society. How do we have a dialogue with it? And that's, learning to dance with your demons. And that's where the shadow work really starts. But you can't do shadow work if you don't give yourself the opportunity or the space to sit down with yourself and say, this is my situation. There's so many ways to do it. There's so many ways to do it, but it's so interpersonal, because it's so, it's your own path, and only you are going to know what's going to work. And that takes trial and error. So no one really can have that answer for you, but you have to do the work, because the work is what will teach you what you need. And the work is what makes you receptive. Just working through that frustration is a great offering. That's the utmost offering to the divine, saying that I am seeking wisdom, that I'm going to work through whatever it is I need to work through. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I think that's the same with any sort of spirit that we're encountering, is when we're ready, it will appear. But we have to do that. If you're not in it, then it's a muscle. Use it or lose it.
You are wise beyond your years. So like our youngest is your age. And I see, not to knock them down, but I see them not taking the bull by the horns, not, these uncomfortable things that that generally people will end up dealing with sometime in their lifetime. When you choose to, like, no, that's not for me, you're just prolonging your pain. You're really just prolonging your pain.
And you're
attracting in there.
You're attracting, you're opening up yourself to attract these lower vibrational things, right? If we're talking about this on we can talk about this in planes or dimensions or planets, like whatever you want, like, but I'm just going to choose talking about this in frequencies. Like, when you are depressed, when you are frustrated, your energy naturally drops to a really low frequency. That makes it very hard to see in front of you, what's behind you. Your awareness kind of buckles up. You're prone to a lot of other, what we would define as low vibrational feelings, which are not really fun. They're necessary, but they're not fun. And that in turn will attract other low frequency things. Whether that be spiritual things or elemental things. And those things can bring even more problems. There's no better time for other things to kind of come confront us when we're at our most vulnerable. Luckily, we don't have this in all locations, but because I live in Salem, we've got some things here that I don't want to deal with. We've got spirits here that I don't want to have anything to do with, So I have to kind of keep that in check, because if you're on a low vibration, you attract other low vibrations. If you're on a high vibration, you're going to attract high vibrations, right? It's the law of attraction. It's reteaching yourself how to operate. We're not only reteaching ourselves how to think in a magical way, but we're also reteaching ourselves how to behave, because we have to find a way to integrate what we know and what is being given to us into our behavior. And that's the mundane world. That's the hardest part of witchcraft, right? We can have all the spiritual experiences we want, right? The gods can fully possess, our space and talk to us and move with us. But if we don't do anything with that, if we don't integrate that in how we view or act on our day-to-day, what was the worth of that spiritual experience, that's the tricky part. How do we take what was just revealed to us and make it count and make it worth it, and allow it to do what it was meant to do, and that's transform us. What we do as magical practitioners is ultimately to transform, and to transform hopefully to its purest element, whether that be ourselves or something outside of ourselves.
Yeah, and when we do take the chance, when we do take when we bet on ourselves, and we do that work, we are becoming our most authentic self. Therefore, making our practice is also transforming as we go through these different chapters in our lives, and somebody, like when we're talking about the burnout, I this morning was dealing with a little bit of that. And I'm like, what did make me happy? Let's think about when I first started and that excitement, and let's go back there. And I found an old playlist that was a meditation playlist that I just started playing, and I was touched by Goddess this morning. I don't often work with Bridget, but in bulk is right around the corner.
Right,
and and I'm just like, what, there was this song and it's by Trinity, and it's Bridget's Kiss. And I ask people to please go in and listen to that, not only for respect of her place in this time cycle right now, in the cycle of the year, but it is really healing, and it touched something in me, and I just felt her like, I got you. I got you. I haven't forgotten you. You are there. And I just started crying, and Bear's like looking at me. He's like, I was just talking to you about something else. I'm like, I totally missed it. Like I was somewhere else, I was somewhere else with that. And it was so invigorating. It was affirming. It was like, what? Yeah, you might have been in a rut, and what was working for you may not work for you right now, because things have shifted. Yes, we're out of 2020. Are we out of the 2020 problems? Maybe not. Most likely not. It's going to be some time, but we have to choose to make small little changes. I mean, it was a small little change, but it was like a light bulb that went off. It's just like, ding, this is something I can do, and I can do it right now. And music is a great way to change the energy in the room. Cleaning is another great way to do that as well. Clapping your hands, a bell, any of these things, snapping, any of these things, singing, dancing. I felt so unencumbered that during the song, I just started to and I'm not a dancer, but it's just like, I just wanted to dance for her, and I just wanted to give her love back that she gave to me. And it was just, I'm going to get all teary. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. It was just beautiful.
Well, it's because it's that mother's love, and it's that love that only a mother can give, and it's boundless. And I mean, when it's there, when it's present, and it's tangible,
it's a gift. It's such a gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, there's so much happening with Imbolc right now. I mean, it's the perfect time to have the Sabbath, because I'm a person. I'm a planner. I'm a Virgo rising, so I relate with the Virgo in you, because I like planning. I like my lists. I like re-envisioning a better new tomorrow. And and being a planner in bulk, that's what it's all about. It's about the cleaning. It's about the clean slate. Let's start, this isn't working, or this isn't serving anymore. Let me change it. And done with a love and a grace, because Bridget, she is those things.
She is those things. She's also a fighter too. I mean, she's all heart and home and lovey-dovey and nurturing, but she's also a blacksmith and a warrior. I mean, she's legit.
If it doesn't work, she will toss it in her fire, destroy it, and make it into something new. And that's,
And there is a connection. I believe there is a connection between her and the Morgan, where there's a very,
they're almost I work with the Morrigan primarily. She's my main goddess within my own, solitary practice. And if I would not work with Bridget if I didn't work with the Morrigan, but I also wouldn't work with the Morrigan if I also didn't have Bridget. Now it was the Morrigan who introduced me to work with Bridget, and the sense that I got is that they're almost like sisters,
Sisters,
or
yeah.
or like first cousins that like grew up together. They're almost like two sides of the same coin. And
Yes.
when you look at their, if we're looking at the Irish lore specifically, it always kind of relates back to the ritual of sovereignty and sovereignty over the land, and
Mm-hmm.
the lore of sacred kingship. I mean, Bridget's name is, translated later on into Britain. When we say the British Isles, we are saying the Isles of Bridget. Those isles still very much belong to her.
Yeah.
Versus the Morrigan, she claims her provinces in Ireland, when she claims over the land or curses the men of Ulster, for one example. So they're very tied to the land, and they're tied to this idea of honesty, of truth, of kingship, of stewardship, of being a priest of the people.
Yeah.
And you can't have one without the other, right? There is, there's war and there's peace, but there's also, there's battle and transition, but there's also she who is the midwife and the bringer in of the world, while the other one takes you out into the other world.
Ooh,
And
that's good. That's good.
Two sides of the same
King, everybody. Nathan King.
they complete and they fulfill each other's roles as in a way that I think is uncommon in the ancient world, in the spite that it's two goddesses working together. That is not at all different from how we see in, later on in the Hellenistic world. We see the same interactions between the conflation of Hecate and Artemis and Diana, where they all fulfill each other's thing. And then we see this conflation of these goddesses into different goddesses, by their epithets. Luckily, in the Celtic world, they don't get conflated as much with each other. Mm-hmm. But they definitely are affected. These are tribal cultures we're talking about. There is a lot more give and take, I think, in that lens of things.
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
But it's her time. It is her time. It's, in bulk, in the belly. Things are growing. Things are stewing.
There's little buds in my garden already. I'm like, we haven't gotten through the snow situation just yet, but still, I mean, there are things. I mean, you can feel it. You can feel it. Definitely felt it this morning. It was just really awesome. Jezebel Von Tech says, we are just starting the 4th year of this 7 years of darkness and deep healing. We're only almost halfway. This sort of rings real true for me. We had taken the kids on a cruise, and we went to the Mayan ruins, and we went to Chichen Itza, and we also went to Tulum. And, the Mayan people are talking about like the ending of that calendar, and they were just like, it's not an ending of a calendar. We're going, it's not a linear calendar. It's a cyclical calendar. And you were coming into a new age. And this age is going to be the age of healing. And we're like, I wasn't even prepared for it then when I heard it, but it rings true now. It rings true now. And we're all in this like weird, I don't know, some people, it's a funk, and some people are like a great awakening. And some of this, I had to fight like, what was that?
And sometimes it's both of those things at once.
That's true. I had to fight like hell, because I'm like, oh my gosh, 2016, we're all about the chat, and that's just sort of fallen to the wayside. And now there's new platforms like TikTok and various other things. People are taking their chats in different ways, but it's not the same. And I say this all the time because I remember Noah very clearly, and he's in the chat. I know. Hello, babe. I remember very clearly Noah sitting at my kitchen table, and we were just like wrapping up the 24-hour chat or something like that we were doing. And he's like, this is amazing. And this is so cool that everybody's all connected. And I'm like, just remember that this isn't going to last. This is very temporary. And you see this a lot with friendship circles. Sometimes the friendship circles just alter, they change, and one leaves or two get married and run off and somebody has a kid. And,
Yeah.
it's like the dynamics will change. It will just constantly be changing. It doesn't mean that it's good. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just is what it is.
It just changed.
It just changed, and change is inevitable. And I, for a long time, didn't want to continue on my YouTube channel because I felt um, not relevant. I didn't have the zazz that Wednesday has, or I didn't have the knowledge that Tequila had, or there was, and I kept comparing myself to everybody else, or I watch your generation that come through and they're doing amazing things with editing and whatever. And I know what my workload is during the week. And also I have to consider my health issues. And so my energy levels go up and down really rapidly. So I'm like, what can I do? What can I do with myself? And then I've sort of forced myself to create this truth talk because I felt that during this forced shadow work time,
Absolutely.
we need to reconnect in some way, shape, or form. And if we could just do that in a safe way without all of the negativity that sometimes YouTube brings.
Mhm.
There's trolls. They're all, I mean,
Yeah.
people will send me things of like parody videos that they make of me or whatever, and I don't even watch it because I don't even care anymore. Those people are low level frequencies, and they can go and do that over there because I just don't really care. I
Right.
can't give that
Well,
any more
yeah.
energy.
When you're able to be so hyper aware of your world, by being so in touch with yourself
Mhm.
and what your utmost intuition and what your utmost divine will is telling you about your life, everything else falls at the wayside. It just does. Um,
Mhm.
and I forgot where I was going with this, but you said something really interesting. Um, and I've lost my train of thought, but it's okay.
About connecting with people again, or
Oh, it's connecting with people again, but I mean, just this whole energy shift that we're going through, like we're definitely, this is the age of Aquarius, and there's a transformation that's happening because people are adjusting to the mass change.
yeah,
Um, we're going through so much cultural change as well right now with what's happening politically,
sure,
specifically for us in America, but throughout the world. I mean, COVID has radically changed what culturally we value, what we need from each other. We're desperate for connection, and it's reflecting in the metaphysical occult world. Look at the resurgence we're having. People need magic. People want magic very, very badly right now, and it's cool. It's cool now. That's a weird shift for me. Because I remember when this wasn't cool. Now it's cool.
I know. Look at how many shows there are on Netflix alone. You're
Right.
just like, another one show? Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
And they're
man.
all referencing stuff. They're all referencing stuff. Like they're doing the research, which is the really like I don't know how to feel about it sometimes because I'm like, I do that.
Yeah,
We're seeing ourselves reflected in media in a very different light, in a very positive light. But it's just different, right? It's a huge adjustment because now people are asking the questions. And we're reevaluating our practices because we have other glimpses of other views. We're so
yeah.
hyper connected with each other. I think it's easy for us to fall into that trap of comparing ourselves. But if your craft works for you, then your craft works for you.
Craft works for me. Yeah. So like I've rededicated myself in my channel. So it's like I'm gonna do truth talk and I'm gonna do magical herb education. And I'm gonna continue doing, like going to places, witchy shops or witchy places or travel and taking people along for the ride because there's a lot of people that aren't able to go and do those things. So it's just like, you know what? That's my niche and I'm sticking to it. I don't need to be Tequila. I don't need to be Wednesday. I don't need to be Trina. I don't need to be Noah.
Right?
Although I wish I was Noah sometimes.
I would love to be Noah. Who doesn't be Noah?
I would just like to reach things.
just be that gentle giant, right?
Okay, I want to get back, like, okay, we are at, what time are we at? We've already done an hour, but I'm able to talk as long as you want to talk, so I don't have
Yeah.
anything else going on right now. I want you to please explain about your brotherhood that you're in, and the information about that. And then I wanted to open it up for questions for anybody. If anybody has questions for Nathan or myself, then please, by all means, put them in the chat, and put them in bold so that we can see them easily, because sometimes they scroll by so fast, and that way it will give us a chance to go back and look.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah. So in I think it was either 2018, 2019, recently I was initiated into the Minoan Brotherhood, which was founded actually in New York City by a man named Edmund Basinski, or Eddie. It was actually just his birthday. And Eddie Basinski was truly a craft visionary, intensely in tune to the goddess. And he was also a gay man. And at this time, and this is probably in the 60s, 70s, of when Wicca, witchcraft, is coming over from England, coming here to the States, it was pretty much you could only be within witchcraft or learn witchcraft if you were in an occult group of some sort. That was just the culture of the time. And so he was a Gardnerian initiate, and he wasn't really, finding spaces for gay people at that time. So he created the Minoan tradition for the Brotherhood, and also the Minoan Sisterhood, which is the female equivalent. So that is for lesbian and bisexual women.
Really?
Yep, there's a Minoan Sisterhood. And these groups were founded, and we are traditional initiatory witchcraft. That is the foundation, or that is what the tradition is based on. But we work within a Minoan framework. So we work with Minoan civilization. We work with that imagery. We work with those ideas. And so, yeah, it is something that, with any sort of system of traditional initiatory Wicca, you would approach the coven leader. There would be some interviews. You would go through, and you would start training with that. And, some people make it through training and they go on to be initiates. Some people don't. But it, for me, has been one of the most amazing spiritual journeys I've ever been on, and specifically, helping me really embrace my identity as a gay person, and as a magical gay person. I feel gay people as a whole have a very, very special gift of artistry and creativity that I don't know. I feel like there's something to do with our sexuality, that there's an element of mystery and connection with the other world that we're able to harvest, or we're able to tap into, that other people may not be able to have that full exposure to.
It's a different energy. It's a different energy, and I mean, as a bisexual, it's well, it's just my bisexualism is different than your being gay. I mean, but you're still a different energy, and it's not like a heterosexual relationship. Not saying that heterosexual is bad. Not saying that it's just different energy.
It's just different, and I will say, and like specifically, with traditional witchcraft in general, it's based on polarity. It's based on the interplay between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. That's just what it is. That's the nature of it. And that's kind of how it's always been viewed in that particular tradition. Not saying that's all witchcraft, but in this particular way of looking at things, that's kind of what it is. So I always like to, because it's important for us to become more gender inclusive, because gender is obviously now, it's more than our sex. So the way I always like to describe it is, we have the male and the female. That's kind of where the bookends of it, but then we have this huge spectrum of things in between, and there's so many different.
I love to tell that to Ridley tomorrow when we're doing our chat. Just like it's like the bookends. That's awesome.
There's so much to discover, because between those two, and gender is so much broader and larger than what we have traditionally been taught. That's changing with us as a culture, and that's going to be reflecting in our magical traditions, certainly in the next few years. That's not to say that these traditions are going to change and adopt those things, but it definitely means that the perspectives are going to be a lot broader, and that's going to open the way for even more magically fueled revolutions to begin. I think witchcraft is exclusive by nature. That's just my opinion. I don't believe that this path is for everybody. I don't believe everybody can do this. And I don't believe there's
be special. Then it wouldn't be special.
It wouldn't be special. And I also believe that there is not one singular form of witchcraft. I think this is a pitfall a lot of new people fall into, is that there is one singular form of witchcraft, and you have to be a certain type of witch. Like, I don't know, what is this whole type of witch stuff? Because like there's sea witches and green witches, and like there's all these different divisions now. And I remember when I was starting out, a witch was just a witch, you know, and you practiced witchcraft, and now there's all these different subdivisions. I think we're getting too caught up in labels. I think we're getting beside the point.
You know where I take it from? I don't know if you ever watched Sex and the City, but it's just like, you know, as females, we were told, you know, that you are a combination of 2 or 3 of the 4 characters in Sex and the City. And I sort of feel that way with witchcraft, as, you know, it's just like, yeah, I'm a sea witch. Yeah, I'm a this, and I'm also a mountain witch, and I'm also a, it's like there's a kitchen witch, and there's so many. Like our daily lives and like our own personalities, we are not just one thing. So to plant yourself, I am just a hedge witch. Like, really? Are you though? No, you're not. You're so much more.
A witch is a witch, and a witch means all those things. And a witch is dynamic. A witch, again, that keeps popping up. That's just the theme of our conversation. You know, witches don't just practice magic, but we are magic. We literally are embodiments of this universal power because of our awareness of it, and because we strive every day to be in tune with it. Because of our connection, our dialogue with whatever that power is, it allows us to find that place for expression.
Right.
It's in that act of expression where we find whatever it is. But the expression is your choice, right? It's an art. It doesn't have to be confounded to one particular thing. It should never be, confined to one particular thing. Don't put your magic in a box, because it's infinite and boundless as you and your imagination.
Nathan, please, I'm not saying now, but please write a book.
It's funny you say that, because during quarantine, I started writing a document, and that document is now up to about 64 pages, give or take. I don't know what it's going to turn into. I'm not promising anything, but it has always been my dream to be able to be a witch, pagan, influencer, author in some way. Not because one day I would love to teach this, right? Ultimately, I would love to teach this. But mostly why I want to do this is I love what I do so much, and I love the spirits that I serve so much, that I want to be able to put something out there that's not only an offering for whom I work with, but an offering to the world to say, look at what has transpired in my life.
Right.
Maybe this will transpire in yours, because knowledge shared is knowledge shared is power gained. And you can't exist one without the other. So there's just this, because I love what I do so much, just this need to express, and this need to, just get people in a place where they can really see what we do in an honest way, but hopefully be inspired or take something away from it. Because I know it inspires me, and if I didn't love what I did, this would be the hardest path ever to be on. I think the things that we endure as witches, once we make those agreements, right, as practitioners, it's wild, right? Some of the things we go through are just bonkers, just wild. Magic can unstabilize you. Magic has the potential, you can go crazy. That's why it's important for us to keep it in check. And again, why I say it's important to have a foundation so those things don't happen. But because it has that potential, there has to be that respect for it.
Yeah.
And it's that respect that will see you on to do it. It's funny going back to like when we're talking about, the new generation of witches coming in, and going back to when we were talking about, oh, I heard a bump in the night, this means this, get rid of it, right? That kind of goes into this idea that we're either, we're not either respecting our powers and our elements enough, or we're putting way too much respect into them to the point where we're fearing them that we don't even want to work with them. Like there's respect and there's fear, and they often go hand in hand. And having a healthy level of fear, helps you acknowledge that this is a primal thing. This is something that has a energy of its own. I am going to work with it. I don't have complete control of this. There's a healthy element of fear that I think is innately in respect. Not that we should be in fear of anything. You know what I'm trying to say? It's a really fine line between those two things. But what I'm seeing a lot of right now is, especially on TikTok, spirits, gods, legends, stories, they're often being treated as almost like jokes. Like, or if they're skits that are being made to a comedic effect to get more likes or follows, and they're being told and crafted like spiritual experiences. But from the spiritual experiences I would have, there's always an element of respect and truth that it's very clearly not a joke.
Wow, and I just kudos to you. Kudos, big time kudos, huge hugs, because it's interesting to hear a younger person's perspective, because here I am, 46, and I usually have friends, I don't know, in their mid to late 50s, from mid 30s to that. I do have younger friends such as yourself. But it's rare, and I'm not necessarily in those daily circles that you guys are in. And sometimes, like, I am on TikTok, but also I'm too lazy to like do stuff. But I have a TikTok, and I sometimes go on there for comedic relief. I haven't dived into the witch talk because I disagree a lot, and I do feel that there's, in some ways, they're being extremely disrespectful, and I also feel that they aren't taking ownership of their own practice. You had touched on something saying that they had, oh
they
god,
the verbiage.
The verbiage.
It's recycling the same story. Recycling the same verbiage, the same stories, the same ideas, even though they may have not actually done the research or experienced it themselves. Back in the 80s, we would have called this, the fluffy bunnies. Now that verbiage has changed, and now we're calling them baby witches or whatever you want to say. Like there's these verbiages are changing,
or whatever you want to call it.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Nope.
But the craft is going through a shift right now because now it's opening up, and we have these new platforms, and we don't know how to use these platforms successfully quite yet. Like, technology is so new, we're still learning how to use it responsibly, and how magic and occultism, this is another big thing. And this comes from my experience being in an initiatory tradition, but going back, to the 60s and prior specifically, witchcraft was a closed practice.
Yep.
It was a closed practice. You could not go, there were not a whole lot of books on the subject. It was still very tabooed. The only way you could really learn the craft is if you went, through Gardnerian, Alexandrian traditions, and were able to absorb their mysteries as a mystery cult, as a priesthood, as a religion, and as a craft, because it's all those things. that was all that was around. So now that witchcraft has become an open practice, and there's reasons why it's become an open practice, certain influential people, you know, authors specifically, the craft is going through that change since the 80s, and it's still going through that change now. You know, how so it's created even more division, if you like, because there are certain witches who won't accept other witches based on whatever, you know, what they're affiliated with or what their lineage is. Or, you know, there's some witches I know that won't even accept somebody who calls themselves a witch if they're not ever been initiated into anything. I'm not one.
I've heard people, okay, so some people my age have even said that gay men are not witches. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. Like, hold up, you know, like they want to go that far. And so like I have some friends that refuse to do magic or circle or any or ritual with males because the males had hurt them previously. So then all males must be bad. And I'm like, whoa. You know, there is a balance to these things. And if you realize that gender is fluid, you know, and there's the bookends between, you know, like you had said, you know, there is everything in between, and you're really dealing with the person's soul, the person's being, and their energy. If you take the gender off of it and you're just dealing with energy, how is that wrong? You know, like I have friends that do Haitian magic. It doesn't mean I do Haitian magic, but it means that I can, you know, namaste, see the good in you, you know, and I see what you're doing over there. I'm doing me over here, but I respect you. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to do it or, you know, follow what you're doing. That's working for you. Great. Yeah. You know, but we should be able to have that fellowship and have that support. YouTube, TikTok, Insta, whatever, we should be able to support each other and go, that's interesting. I would have never thought to have used that before. Good for them. Because why are we hating?
Yeah. I always say, you know, we are alike because we are different, you know, and there's a celebration that there's a need for respect, but, you know, a lot, like I'm somebody who comes out of a closed tradition, you know, closed practice for what I practice. A lot of these traditions are still closed practices. Somebody brought that up in the chat, and I'm really glad they said that, because what we also have to keep in mind on the other side of things that, you know, if you're not initiated into a certain practice, it's probably not your place to talk about it, right? Because you don't know what's really going on the inside. You can't really speak on somebody else's practice because it's not your practice, you know. So this is where it can get into an even bigger, broader subject of like cultural appropriation and, you know, making sure a lot of these traditions, you know, any tradition I think is going to have an element of making an oath, swearing allegiance to a group or, you know, or to a particular set to say, I'm going to honor myself and do this, you know, so oaths are important too. We have to honor each other in those things because there's all going to be different, varying practice to practice. We have to have a respect around all the thing that we're alike, but we're also different, you know. So one group doesn't have to accept you as a whatever because you're not part of their group, you know. That doesn't, you know, you're not entitled to acceptance, you know, and that's a life thing. And that took me a lot of time to realize. It wasn't until I actually moved and started an adult life I kind of realized that. And that's the same in any group, you know. That could be friend groups, that could be work cliques, you know.
Yeah, I saw your New Year's resolution. I saw you.
Yeah, you have to be confident enough in your own stuff. You have to be able to learn how to validate your own stuff, that you don't need to seek anybody else's opinion or approval on it because it's just not their practice. What goes on in my group is what goes on in my group. What happens in circle stays in circle. End of story. It's no one else's business because it's not their practice. If you're not in my temple room and in my circle, you know, with me, I don't care. You know, I don't care, but I care about what insights you may have. And I love hearing what people, you know, think. And I agree to disagree. And that's the beauty of this. We can all agree to disagree because none of us really know. And that's the exciting part. We're mystics. We are mystics, and we're diving in. We're answering questions that create more questions. there's always going to be a question mark at the end of what we do. That's what makes it exciting. That's what keeps it fresh, and that's what keeps it evolving, you know? So learn to build a bridge instead of a wall. But again, what I said before, you know, keep an open mind, but don't let your brain fall out.
I love it. I just love it.
No,
oh my gosh.
Just do your own thing.
Do your own thing. I mean, and you have to do your own thing. I mean, I do have other friends, you know, with very popular YouTube channels that do a lot of how-tos. They do a lot of how-tos, and, you know, they get a lot of views because they're doing the how-tos. But I also feel that at some point, I'm okay to teach people about magical herbal education, because it's like, here's the herb, this is, you know, it's a feminine, it's associated with such and such god. I can give you all of that information. I use it for this. You could also use it for this, and this. But these how-tos have actually enabled some very lazy people out there in their practice to constantly be, and I refer to them as askholes, because they ask all these questions and they don't do anything with that information, and they sort of drain you down like energy vampires, so to speak. And it's like, they are not, you are not helping them. Your practice, your magic, your connection to spirit, goddess, whatever you want to call it, is really dependent on how much time and energy you put into it. And it has to be you. Another movie reference that I like to use a lot is House with the Clock in the Walls. I don't know if you ever saw that one, but I love it. And Noah, you have to watch this movie too. Noah. He's always never watching London movies. But anyhow, Jack Black talks about this, is teaching this kid how to do magic, and he's reading the spell, and he's got all the stuff, and he's just, you know, trying his best or whatever, and it's not working. And, you know, Jack Black looks at him, he's like, well, why isn't it working? I said all of the right words. I used the right herbs. I did the right thing. I did the flick, you know, I did all this stuff. Why is it not working? He's like, that last 1% is you. It has to be you. And if you're unauthentic, if you're lacking confidence, if you don't know who you are or where your boundaries are, how can you really effectively practice? What are you going to get out of that other than uncertainty? Yeah. You are going to be left with a whole lot of questions, but you have to be brave enough in this path to try some things on and see if you even connect with them. Because if it's something that you're like, oh yeah, and you're on TikTok and I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to say. Well, is that really what you want? Because do you really connect with that? Are you really down to like do some chicken feet? Because let's talk about it. Yeah. You know, like, are you really down to do some chicken feet? Because, you know, my poor husband, as soon as Trina and Tequila gave me chicken feet, he's like scared to touch them. He don't want anything to do with it. He's a germaphobe. He's like, rah! You know, he's like, they have to be painted only, you know, and all this stuff. Like, don't go there, and don't talk about things to kind of piggyback on what you said. Don't talk about things and feel like you're comfortable in that without doing the research, without trying it on, without seeing if that's something that really fits you. Maybe you don't want to work with animals. Yeah. Maybe you want to work in a different type of thing. Maybe you are more of an herbal witch or whatever, but that can also blur the lines into other things. Plus, don't put yourself in a box.
I love that you brought that up, because I mean, we're seeing all these new different witchcraft, you know, is a craft. Therefore, there is an element of art form. I was just watching a lecture earlier today about how all systems of spirituality are about artistic expression in some way, whether that be through dance, poetry, scripture, ritual. Everything we do is an artistic expression of a feeling that we get from what we would call the divine or magic, whatever you want to call it. And with that being said, we're getting all these new interpretations of like what witchcraft is, what witchcraft isn't. So like there's the ookity kookity spookity camp, they call them. They want to work with animal bones and, you know, really traditional things. And I love that kind of stuff, you know. That's definitely, I love that aesthetic, but it's an aesthetic, right? But I go over to another tradition or another person's place. And what I find is that the aesthetics are very different, but what they're doing is ultimately the same. Like I find that there's so much crossover between what we're all doing, more so than there are differences.
Ooh, I like
And
that. Yeah, let's look at our similarities instead of our differences, people.
right,
Yes.
absolutely. Because that is what creates, what I believe is the universal witch spirit. The witch spirit, the spirit of the first witch who touched Earth. She who is the mother of all witches, the first ancestor. That similarity. She is that bridge. She's a spirit in her own right, and we're all on a path as witches to discover her as our ancestor, the witches that came before us, whether that be spiritually speaking or, our ancestors who might have actually been magical practitioners, whatever form it might have been in. We all have magical practitioners. I don't care who you are. You go back far enough, you have a witch in your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have an inkling that there was a witch in your family, you're probably a witch.
Probably.
Just
Yeah. The amount of people I see here, especially, I mean, I live in the hub of witchcraft, right? Like I can't get away from it. I live in Salem. It's on our taxis, it's on our signs. When I go to the grocery store, it's the Witch City Mall. Like everything here is craft related in some way. I walk by a witch at least twice a day, and sometimes it's just a feeling. It could be that they are really, there's so many of us here. Witches are all around us. There's no doubt about it, and they may not use that title, they may not claim that yet, but I think being a witch is so much bigger than one particular thing. It's a state of mind, it is a state of awareness, and it's a state of creativity. There's an element of creation with being a witch. Always, it's creation. So those really artsy people who are creating in whatever way, they're doing a sacred art, and that's magic. That's how they're channeling magic. That's musicians, that's painters, that's actors, that's all the people that we turned to when we went into quarantine. When we went into quarantine, what did we do? We got on Netflix, we got on Etsy, we got, the crafters, the artists. Those were the people that we turned to. Let's not forget that. Those are the magic makers of our generation, because they're channeling that same expression of the divine and making it so it's accessible for us. That's magic. And I think that's just as much being a priest of the streets as is, me doing a public circle here in Salem or going to volunteer at the soup kitchen. It is, yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta ask, like, how's your mom?
Yeah.
How's your mom? I'm like, I know you've talked with me about mom before. Like, are they happy that you're in Salem? Are you close to them?
It's interesting how it is. So I actually just went to visit them not too long ago, and I don't know. There's definitely a change that's happening. I find that as I'm getting older, I'm starting to recognize how different I am than my family, more so. I'm also starting to see the generational differences. And I don't know if it's something my parents are going to turn around from, because my parents have recently moved to a very conservative area. It's what they're accustomed to. And I'm slowly but surely seeing them become even more conservative than they already were. So
okay.
It's kind of going the opposite spectrum. We're still very close. I still talk to my parents every day. They're still extremely supportive, but it is very apparent that there's a difference, and it brings up that same feeling that I had growing up of how different I was from my family, being so sensitive and talking to dead people and, wanting to be the best witch I possibly could be in a very conservative, very environment, So if you find yourself in that situation, there's three things, like I couldn't practice in my own house most of my high school career, but I was still practicing witchcraft because I would go to parks. I would go, over to a friend's house. I would, use things that I knew I could easily dispose of, which is kind of weird because, you know, when you look at traditional writings of like witch trials and things, witches would talk about, you know, using plain everyday objects
Mm-hmm.
because they're afraid of, you know, the persecution. So I kind of touched into that, but the biggest advice is, you know, is you have to, again, be so secure in your belief. And again, it's passion for me. It may not be passion for you. It might be something else, but it was the passion that I had for the craft and for the spirits that I served. And the excitement I have about magic that kept me going. And
Yeah.
again, it goes back to what I said. Change happens, right? We have it, everything she touches and everything she touches changes. That's always going to happen. We have to learn how to make an adjustment. That's what, you know, we're co-creating. We just have to learn to make that adjustment. And it's finding that adjustment that's the hard part. And that's what I did growing up. I made an adjustment. I found places that I could practice in. I found groups that I could go to after school away from my family and
Mm-hmm.
kind of find my own self. It's
You
also
found yourself in theater. I know theater was a big thing for you.
a huge thing. And I even within the theater world, I found, you
Mm-hmm.
know, tons of adversity.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's different. You know, I actually, you were one of the first people I called. I was a member of a clown troupe, and it was traveling, and we got booked at a church, and the church found out I was gay. They didn't know I was a witch yet, but they found out I was gay, and they basically asked me to leave, you know.
I
And
I was like ready. Bear and I were just like, we're getting in the car and we're gonna go find him and
and
we're gonna
it
like
was
get him.
it
Like we
was
were scared.
middle of Ohio, middle of nowhere. I had no, like, I grew up in conservative area before, but nothing compared to conservative Ohio. Had no idea that that even existed. I was exposed to a whole new world, and I had to make a decision if I was going to stay or if I was going to leave. I was no longer interested in that style of performance. I already kind of moved on. I was more invested in what I was going to do as a ritual performer. You know,
Right.
like when I'm in a ritual, when I'm casting circle, I am performing for me and the gods. You know, and it's the performance that helps evoke and invoke the spirit of what I'm doing, because I give it that character. Again, I say this is an art form. It's giving it a spirit. It's giving it an aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a performance thing for me. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's not real. It's very real. You know, it's channeling through something bigger than the self. I was more interested in that aspect of the theater.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember calling you and being like, heck, what do I do? And you said, if it no longer serves, leave.
Yeah.
And the next day, I packed up my car and I did. And I got back home and I had like 2 months of the summer left to me. I was going to be on this theater troupe for the entire summer. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do with the rest of my summer? I attended my first pagan pride.
Yeah, I remember.
And that first pagan pride connected me with a huge festival in Michigan called Convocation, which is one of the largest metaphysical conferences of its kind. That group introduced me to that convention, which introduced me to other groups. And then within the next year, I was lecturing and teaching at different shops and stuff from the networking that I did. And then all of that took me to connecting with people all the way here on the East Coast from Little old Michigan. And now I'm doing classes and doing rituals and psychic readings in Salem. Everything's connected. Everything gets put in your path for a reason. It's staying open and making an adjustment. I made an adjustment, and now I'm doing theater, the type of theater that I want, and
Type of thing that you want. Yeah.
it's mystical and it's magical and it's my everyday life, and I couldn't be more grateful.
Well, you're perfect for it. You're perfect for it. You remind me so much of a friend that is no longer with us, but in high school, there was this just beautiful light of a person, a very dynamic person that was in my theater group and was misunderstood. People didn't, really try to understand where he was coming from at all, but he was so dynamic and so full of love and so accepting. And you remind me so much of him. His name's Simon. And sometimes he comes around. Sometimes he sees me around every now and again, and it's nice that he's here and feels comfortable, in order to visit every now and again. But
Well, he'll be a mighty traveler.
He was just amazing. And ever since I've met you and I saw your little cute face pop up on that little live in that group, I'm just like, look at this kid. Like he is like coming for it. I love it so much. And I felt a connection with you like right away. And there is the part of me that I did in the last Truth Talk, it came out that, you know, I was in movies and in TV, but I was also in high school theater. And high school theater was really cathartic, was very cathartic for me. And being able to have that theater in-person experience is a different type of energy. And when you do your channeling and it's not just memorizing words.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of times that I just went off script, but, but when you have to do that for the camera and they're trying to capture something, it's different. It's a different type of energy and could be really negative. It could be really negative real quick. That exchange that you have in the theater is like life-giving sometimes. I mean, it is just amazing. And it reminds me, I remember a long, long time ago, Tequila Lady Grave Dancer was talking on her channel about she would sometimes go to church, even though she doesn't believe that, just for the worship.
Energy whore. That's what she calls
it. I know. That is what I got from theater, the in-person theater. Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. That is the difference for sure.
Yep. And I will say, I've met so many witches within the theater because I truly feel actors, dancers, painters, whatever, these are sensitive people. These are psychically sensitive people because they're tapping into divinity, which is creativity. And you will find so many of the things that we use as actors, you know, studying seriously the techniques and the craft of acting. We use the exact same stuff that we use within witchcraft. We use grounding exercises. We use
I do the relaxation exercise before I go to sleep and sometimes before meditation because it just gets me right there.
Yep. You know, there's all these things because, you know, and this is specific with theater, not so much with film and TV. Theater is living truthfully and believably in the moment under imaginary circumstances. So it can be different every time you do it. You know, and that is the storytelling of theater, and it's live and it's tangible. It's right in front of you versus film and TV. They're telling a story based off of the pictures, based off of the visual, and they're looking to capture that one specific visual versus in the theater. We don't give a rip about the visual. We give a rip about the characters and their behavior because theater is about the action.
And the projection. The projection. Yep.
Right. It's about the action. There is no story on the stage without the action. And that's raw. That's harnessing a very raw, a very primal energy. Yeah. It's one that gets people get very excited about it. And it's one that we're missing right now. We're missing theater so much right now. But theater will change. It will come back. Mark my words. I am prophesizing this. It will come back. It'll come back stronger than ever, and we will see a renaissance of more stories.
I hope so. I hope so. Okay, well, I drank this whole thing of water, so I have to go now.
I gotta go. I drank my coffee.
We only have so much bladder. So much bladder. We can talk for days. And I welcome you back if you want to do another collaborative or anything like that. I would love to have you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You fill me with so much joy, and I don't think that you even realize. I mean, I don't think you know. I don't think you know, but you're just. I'm always thinking about you. I know that I've got like a little troop of people that I just sort of like check in every now and again. I'm always thinking about you guys, but you are just somebody that's just so special to my heart. I'm so excited that the universe has brought us together. Yeah. I just think the world of you. I think you're amazing. And I know that you're going to do fantastic things. You're already doing them.
Thank you so much. If you guys want to follow me, I've got a couple follow options. Let me go ahead and make sure I send you to the right place. Of course, I'm on Facebook, so if you want to add me on Facebook, you can look up Nathan King, Salem, Massachusetts. I should be popping up on the Facebook world. If you want to visit my website, I am putting it out there. I am not currently doing readings right now. That's going to be coming in the next few months. But if you want to visit my website, you can find me at nathanking.witch@weebly.com.
Nice.
Again, I'm also on TikTok, which is at NathanKing410. And yeah, it'd be great to connect with all of you guys. Thank you so much. If you guys are here for attending, this is huge. Just thank you for your presence. Please give Raven a subscribe and a like. And if you liked anything that was said, give it a share. Yeah, yeah, our audience always makes, audiences make the shows and makes the discussions what they are. So it wouldn't be possible without all of you guys. So thank you so much for your attendance.
Yeah, thank you for that. And please private message me those links, and then I'll make sure to put them in the description box down below so everybody can find you with just a tap of a tap. And what was I going to say? I was going to say something, but I forgot. Oh, well. Tomorrow I have a chat with my kid Ridley, and we are changed the time a little bit because there was I got a lot of messages saying that people really wanted to be in that live chat, but we were doing it in the morning, and because it's a Monday, and even though I have Mondays off, whatever, people were going to be at work and they were going to miss it. So I talked with Ridley this morning. We're changing it to 6 p.m. tomorrow evening. It'll be 8 p.m. Texas time, 6 p.m. Pacific, and we will be talking about the parent perspective in regards to a transitioning child and their perspective and all kinds of crazy, silly, fun things that we do, and how this mom has just now started to call everybody them, they, because I'm covering my bases.
Yeah. I find myself doing that too if I'm in public spaces.
I just don't know. So, and I'm so like hyper aware now that I just don't want to offend. So I hope that you join us for that. Oh, now I know. Okay, so yes, this is live. If you don't see the little red, where am I? Up here, this little red live. If you don't see that little red live thing, that means that we're not live anymore. But the way this StreamYard works is that it will post like a regular video that you can watch anytime that you want to. So you didn't have to necessarily be here live, but you can watch it whenever you want. So that will probably happen in about an hour because we went almost 2 hours of chatting. Yeah, I know. I know. Well, the next 24 hours, I think we're going to have you on because you'll definitely cover a solid 2, if not 4-hour block.
Yeah, I would love to come back. So let's make that happen.
Okay. Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you so much, Nathan. I love and adore you so much. Say hi to Mom. And we love and leave you. Many blessings, you guys. Many blessings.
Many blessings, and blessed be to all of you.